us. Welcome all to this official side event at the UN Ocean Conference. I'm Cristina Deligiani, the Public Policy Officer of the Institute for Sustainable Development of the European Public Law Organization, an international organization with permanent observer status to the UN General Assembly. We will be talking about creating partnerships to finance sustainable development for the ocean. Today with us, we have, starting with Mr. Miguel Bernard, who is sitting next to me, a senior fishery officer from the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean, GFCM, of the FAO, Mr. Guy Auger, partner from Andera Partners, Mr. Ruben Eirash, whom most of you might know. He's the Secretary General of Forum Oceano, and he's also co-organizing this event today with us. We also have the support of the Greek Ministry of Maritime Affairs. Mr. Gregory Dimitriadis, he's the CEO of and executive member of the board of the Hellenic Corporation of Assets and Participations, and Mr. Spiros Kouvelis, the director of the Eplo Institute for Sustainable Development.
Christina, before you continue, I think we should explain to people that they need to keep the power button pressed for 3 seconds.
Yes, so there is some housekeeping. There is a set of headphones in your seat. You have to press the power button for 3-4 seconds until it turns on. It's red, and you can all hear as well because there's a bit of ambience noise. Are we all set?
More or less.
Yes? So I will start with Mr. Bernard from GFCM FAO. How is the GFCM approaching sustainable blue investments, and specifically investments in fisheries and aquaculture in the Mediterranean? And how does this approach relate to the SDG commitments that have been set by the FAO in general?
Thank you, Christina. So the fishing sector has changed a lot in the last decades, and recognizing this, the FAO has created a dedicated roadmap to facilitate investments and facilitate a change in the sector, which is called Blue Transformation. This roadmap particularly try to attract investments to improve aquaculture as a way to contribute more to alleviate poverty and hunger in the world. It also addresses fisheries by try to enhance fisheries management as a way to sustainability, which again is a way to maintain the profitability of the sector. And finally, it addresses the value chain as a whole, as a way to generate better profits from the same kind of catches. The GFCM, following a little bit the lead from FAO, has in the new strategy that we have, the GFCM 2030 strategy, addressed these same issues. In particularly, we are trying to enhance the development of aquaculture in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. This is a field where the Mediterranean is lagging behind some other regions. So I think there is a big market and a big opportunity to develop aquaculture. For fisheries, unfortunately, we are in a situation in which the sustainability is very far from where we are right now. So here the main efforts are to try to really enhance the sustainability by addressing fisheries management rules, by enhancing compliance with the 16 rules. And the idea here is to at least manage to get to a level of catches that are sustainable and that allow fishers to have a livelihood out of the fisheries. Finally, as you know, small-scale fisheries is a very big part of the fishing in the Mediterranean. And for these kind of fisheries, the main problem we are having is that they usually don't have access to social security, they don't have access to minimal set of working conditions that create livelihoods that are not only sustainable but also decent. So again here there is a big commitment to enhance the situation of this sector. The good thing of this strategy is that it has attracted many investors. So in the last 10 years, we have nearly multiplied the voluntary contributions to the GFCM by 10. Mm-hmm. And in particular, we are attracting not only our usual donors, which is the European Union, which is countries in the Mediterranean, but we are also attracting international facilities such as GEF, such as MAVA Foundation, other foundations that are really putting their trust in us to address this ambitious roadmap. We really hope that by enhancing the current situation in the Mediterranean, we will be able to get all of these new investors to put money on our activities. Finally, just to say that, of course, this very ambitious strategy that we have can only be carried out with partners. So again, that's another opportunity for us to look for diversification of activities, diversification of funds.
That is great, and it's amazing how you also integrate SDG 14, which is life below water, with other SDGs such as having sustainable and decent, dignified livelihoods. Thank you. Mr. Roger, from the private sector, for the private funds, Andera is a very significant fund manager, 3.2 billion euros in investments in many companies around the world, in Europe and in the US. And also, Andera is a leading partner when it comes to sustainable finance on balancing economic performance with the social and environmental impact of investments. Can you tell us how this is done, specifically in the field of the blue economy, and what the plans of the funds for sustainable blue investments are?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're right. We are a historical, a private equity player based in France, managing about 20 funds today. And I'm responsible for the infrastructure part at Andera, where we have two funds now focused on impact infrastructure within the energy transition. So we're very much focused on the energy side of things right now. And clearly, as we're raising those funds, when you want to invest in infrastructure for over a 20, 30 year lifespan, we know it was obvious for us we needed to do it in an impact way. So looking at the SDGs, mostly around the energy, but ensuring that we were creating value of the assets as they evolve. Within that, the blue economy is definitely a new topic. It's interesting that you mentioned investor, but I think you in your speech you mix donors and investors. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
We're in to make money on the amount of money we invest. We're not giving it away, right? But
Fisheries is trying to move to produce money as well, and
Exactly.
aquaculture.
For sure,
Exactly.
for sure.
But what's interesting, and I did a little tour around before this session. There's a lot of companies. There's a lot of opportunities, and we see the blue economy as really the next stage where we want to invest, because now it's starting to move outside of the donation piece and into business sustainable opportunities that we can invest and make a return on. Right now, obviously, we've been mostly looking at opportunities around the ports, because we're on land still, compared to the water. But clearly, we see the opportunities growing. So that's why.
Amazing. We will be talking more about ports and coastal investments in a little while. Mr. Eirash, we are here at the Portuguese Pavilion at One Sustainable Ocean, which you and your team have organized. So we know that the blue economy is one of the pillars of the Portuguese economy in terms of economic development, in terms of vision. What are the best Portuguese practices in this field that you can share with us in terms of sustainable blue investments and blue finance?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to here. So it was a pleasure, to partner with Eplo and with Christina and Spiros, longtime friends. So, what kind of good practices can we share? First of all, the Portugal Blue Fund is one practice that we can share. So it was launched. I'm not saying this because I'm promoting myself. Just something that has happened. When I was Director General for Maritime Policy, we started and we were able to do the process in 3 months of launching, the first sectorial EIF Blue Economy Fund. So it was a novel experience for our National Development Bank, also for the Blue Fund, because at the time, and still it is, the Directorate General for Maritime Policy runs the Blue Fund. And we say, how can we, multiply the money that we have, that was not much, but also more than multiply, how to make an instrument that could be distinctive and that could make, I would say, a buzz, in a way of saying, and also that had the power to diminish risks in terms of guarantees and so on. So the EIF approach was something that for igniting the ecosystem was key. And what was the result? The result is that for a country like Portugal, that it is what it is in terms of finance, it helped to structure the ecosystem. Because what has happened is not only we have an entity that is the operator of the Blue Economy Fund, but also it helped to catalyze the search of the first Blue Economy totally private fund. It's the Blue Fund from Indico Capital Partners. So something that was completely unthinkable. 3 years ago.
Of course.
Now we don't have only one fund, we have two funds that are already okay, and it starts to igniting the ecosystem. So this is the first practice. The second practice is related to ports. It's the project that we are doing of the Atlantic Smart Ports Blue Accelerator Network. So what is the aim? Is to build an acceleration and innovation ecosystem that uses the ports as accelerators, as blue economy hubs. Why ports? Because ports are the main interface between land and sea, and are prepared with the necessary infrastructure for the basis of those operations. So what we're talking about, aquaculture, even onshore, aquaculture, they need to pump water. So where do you have that kind of infrastructure? You have it in the port. And that's one more incentive to have clean water in the port. Because aquaculture, you have to have water with quality. So here is a way to protect the ocean using the economy. Your product depends on a healthy ocean. So for the port to attract aquaculture, it has to be an healthy port and a clean and safe port. So just to give that example. So where we are at the moment, we are selecting the startups for the acceleration program. We have about 200 startups at the moment. Our goal to reach 400, and don't know if we are going to reach that, but we are half the way. And we are going to have the boot camp for choosing the pilots that are going to be financed and deployed in 30 ports. So there are 30 ports in the Atlantic, EU, that want to become blue economy hubs and deploy these pilots, but with a twist. The pilots are not only to apply in one port. The pilots are multi-port. So in one shot, you deploy a pilot and it's going to be tested in 5 ports, 6 ports, 4 ports. What you gain with this? Scalability and replicability of the technology from the time you are doing the pilot. So that's, I think, more attractive for an investment fund to have it. So here the challenge, what it is to have, the instruments, the public instruments, to be prepared to finance pilots in this way, or the investment funds to be prepared to finance pilots with this in this approach. So this is the bottleneck that we have. So I think it's a different way of doing the acceleration.
Amazing.
But we have to, in terms of financing, we have to do this kind of improvement. So to do, really to accelerate the deployment of sustainable solutions.
This is a great practice, and I'm wondering whether this could actually work in the Mediterranean and especially in Greece. Mr. Dimitriadis is the head of the Hellenic Corporation of Assets and Participations. You also handle Greek ports, if I'm not mistaken. So how does the dimension of sustainability connect with the strategy that you have set for your entity, and what are you working on in terms of the blue economy?
Yes, thank you first of all for the invitation. It's very good to be here and exchange views and opinions also for the ports. In our portfolio we have also managed about the 10 biggest ports in Greece, and also we have fish wharves, 11 fish wharves in Greece, so we are also part of the fisheries economy in the country. In HCAP, which is our new brand name, it's called like the Growth Fund, as is effectively Greece's sovereign wealth fund. We want to evolve it to a sovereign wealth fund. We're relatively new, just 5 years old. I think the other newest one is Malta, but what we have as a name is, on one hand, we have a lot of state assets, companies from postal services to food companies, including the fisheries. The privatization fund is also under us, which also has ports and marinas, a real estate company, and so on. And the idea is that we make sure that all these companies operate, that we have as subsidiaries operate at their best, they increase the value, and of course offer better services to the people, either to the public or to the people involved in where we have B2B activities. In also another element which we are about now to grow is our investment part, because as a fund we also have some funds that we should invest in within the economy, and this is also something that we're building upon, and it is also interesting to see how to move around that. In terms of our strategy, we have a new strategy for the next 3 years, and the key things is the economy, because we want to increase overall the value we have in the economy. It is the citizens, because they have to trust our services, and anyway we're a state fund. And of course the environment. Our companies in total account for 25% of total CO2 emissions in Greece. So this gives us a lot of responsibility to become much greener, and for that we have a very aggressive plan. So ESG is not just something to tick the box, but it's an integral part of our strategies. And this also includes initiatives that we are part of the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Funds, which is a forum of all the major sovereign wealth funds and private funds in order to promote sustainability, Paris Agreement, and within this forum also to exchange best practices how to achieve this. In terms of the ports, yes, we believe that ports and marinas as well, it is essential that they have the necessary ESG criteria, because that's how they will become sustainable. Even when we attract investors and they come and invest, they want to see that, and it will also be much more sustainable for the jobs we want to create for the local societies where the ports are. So we have a lot of way to go on that, but we are very determined and we can elaborate further later.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kouvelis, I know because we work together at the Institute for Sustainable Development of Eplo. We do a lot of work in the field of the blue economy at a global level, not only in Greece or only at the international level. What are some best practices when it comes to sustainable blue finance that you can share with us?
It's a trick question.
It
to
is a
see
trick
whether
question.
I'm actually paying attention when
Yes,
we work together.
exactly.
So,
it is a trick question.
Look, I will mention 3 examples that are covering three different types of investment of how it can happen. Before I do that, I just want to mention as an underlying basis for all of Europe, the Blue Economy Finance Principles that were launched in 2018. That was a very important basis because it kind of set the field on what is really sustainable investment for the blue economy. We played our part in that by developing the Ver Impact methodology. So you have the principles and methodology that lead to developing something that really makes sense. And as a result, actually last year, the European Commission with the EIB and the European Investment Fund launched together the 500 million Blue Invest new round, let's say, part of which is what Ruben announced. But this is just an underlying basis that leads Europe to become one of the leaders in that. Now, the 3 examples I would mention are not related to Europe. The first one is a case of how national debt can be turned into sustainable investment, and it's a case of Seychelles in 2018, when the Seychelles actually did 2 things. One is that they raised a sovereign blue bond of 15 million. That was complemented. Sovereign blue bond was specifically oriented towards sustainable fisheries management. And then they complemented that with the conversion of 21.6 million into from national debt to nature debt. And that was a specific fund that was created for investing in ocean conservation and climate resilience that led to the creation of the 2nd largest marine protected area in the West Indian Ocean. This is actually an investment because it creates a lot of income from fisheries and from tourism, and actually it's not state funding, but it's an investment in its sense.
Right.
So this is how public debt, let's say, and public financing can be seen as investment. The other case is the case, a much smaller investment, but very interesting, in the Gulf of California, especially in the part between Mexico and California, where there was a case of, it's a species called the Vaquita marina porpoise. It's a small dolphin, a fantastic species. Because of illegal fisheries and bycatches, the reduction or the drop of the population was by 98.6%. At this place, Mexico and the United States teamed up with, with Pelagic Data Systems for a very super high density monitoring of fisheries that led to the reversal of the loss of this species. But at the same time, this created, with a very small investment, a very high revenue in terms of better regulated and higher quality fisheries. So the money that was paid in this was actually paid back in terms of taxes and income from the fisheries, and it actually paid itself for the protection of the species. And the third case, which is a much bigger case, but I'm referring to it because it refers to the ports that you said, is a case of DP World. DP World is the port operator based in Dubai. DP World raised again in 2018 a 2 billion green revolving fund, a green revolving loan actually. And it is a revolving loan because it is connected to how and to with what interest rates the fund will be revolving if they manage to attain the targets that they engage with in terms of climate change and reduction of CO2 emissions, and in fact, and other things that they do. And the way it pays back is that this money is paid into the ports that they manage. One case is the port of Antwerp in Belgium, where they have done, I'll tell you just 3 examples and I will stop here. One is investment in hydrogen, which is expected to have very high returns in that. The second is the circular water use, so massive savings in water use and water treatment and everything. And the third is the interport connection, which they did, they call it the water bus. So they have almost totally eliminated cars movement within the port, and everything is done with a water bus moving daily 20,000 people. And this pays back, actually. It pays back because everybody is actually paying the water bus fees, subsidized to some extent, but it pays back. And this is how the private side, let's say, of investment can actually finance things. These are just three examples of innovative, let's say, ways that we can look into financing and investment in the blue economy. And I have more if you want me to, but later on.
No, because it will be like biased. I will be biased if I let you speak more. But coming back to ports, because most of you have touched upon this subject. There are so many sustainability challenges, new ones, biodiversity loss, climate change adaptation and mitigation, sustainable energy, urban development. How can these challenges be met, but also encourage economic development when it comes to ports in the direction of sustainable blue investments? Any of you can actually answer the question.
If I may, I think that what you mentioned, what brings support is diversifying the revenue mix. The conventional business model is cargo and people handling. So here, it's the opportunity to go beyond that. So to have the port specialized for operations in ocean and floating offshore wind, or ocean and renewable energies, or a specialization in aquaculture, or in an area of biotech, or even for submarine cables. That's smart cables is now a very hot topic now. So digital ports, and it's there. So especially for small and medium-sized ports, or old fishing ports where the fishing has decayed, and communities that lived and which identity it was based on that activity. This brings a whole new opportunity for development and for the revival of those coastal communities. And it's happening, very in a steady way, but it could be accelerated. And this means, diversifying the activity of the ports with activities of highly value added that enhance the strategic value of the territory.
Yeah, we've seen it. If you look at the UK, north of UK, the transformation of the ports with all the offshore business, it's been exactly huge.
And in Ireland you also see that. So
and I was actually sitting with the guy in charge of the new projects of the Marseille-Fos port last week, and he was telling me he used to get one significant project every 4 or 5 years, and that was 10 years ago. Now the last 2-3 years he gets 10 a year. Now he's doing auctions on his land, because he's got land, whether it's hydrogen projects, offshore, you name it, waste management, and it's basically, the ports are becoming a real hub for transformation.
But I think what you both say is very interesting, not only in the sense of creating new value, new income, but it's very important, especially coming from the side of the North England, let's say, cases, and also other Nordic places, because you have also a reduction on in the OPEX for keeping those places alive, which is very important, because otherwise, if you want to keep those places alive, you need to actually have a lot of government subsidy to keep the people running. Whereas when you have these types of investments, not only you create value, but the people stay there, and you have facilities that are financed by that, so that you would have like nursery schools or health centers or something like this. And in another case, these people would probably have to move to a city nearby or to a bigger city, and the cost of servicing these extra people in mega cities is much, much higher than keeping them through good investments.
I'd like to talk about this a little bit, because following a little bit the first interventions, fisheries is not the most sexy investing sector right now. But on the other hand, talking about maintaining communities, talking about keeping livelihoods and trying to maintain the kind of coast that we would like. This is where we are trying to work at FAO. The problem here is that we are lacking information on how to really value the value of fisheries and how much they contribute to local economies. Particularly in Europe, we are having a region that has a huge demand from fish, and we have to import it from other areas in many cases. Sometimes because the resources here are not in a very good shape, but some other times it's just because of lack of commercialization, lack of value chain, lack of adequate markets for the ones that we have here. So it is very normal that we want to diversify ports and use ports for other activities other than fisheries. But it's also very important that we keep this capacity of having local fisheries, because at the end of the day, fisheries in the Mediterranean, for example, it clearly means tourism. You go to Greece, you go to any place, and you expect to have your fish in your plate when you are in the restaurant, and we are importing part of this from our world. This is a big cost, this is a big environmental problem. We are really charging a lot on long distance marketing, while we could invest in having our local facilities better prepared, more sustainable, and having bigger value added to the local fisheries. And I think this is something that we all have to work together to try to achieve.
May I? In fact, one of the areas, and there are some startups here present in the venue, where there is, I would say, certainly what you could say the precision fishing. Because, you know, the way also, if you think why we fish in the way of those operations made, is really to lack of information by the fisherman itself, because you go to do your operation by instinct or by the empirical knowledge that you have of an area. You don't see in your, okay, you can do some bathymetrics and so on, but deploying robotics and other, this kind of information, that the technology that brings more information about what you need to fish, then you can fish with precision and with quality, and not with only focusing on volume for diluting the risk. So using drones to pre-identify the area where you are going to fish, with the sharing of that data, for example, to the fisheries agency. Using
and more modern boats. They are all 30 years old, 40 years old.
With new fuels, new propulsion fuels that are more sustainable. That also, if you have more information and more precision, you use less energy. So,
yeah, this is great stuff. But in the end, what you need to do, because newer boats are great. Boats are infrastructure. I invest in infrastructure, but to invest, I need cash flow visibility, and that's where I think governments, organizations can create that, because if you can apply the same recipe on the ocean that governments have done in the energy. I mean, energy, we wanted renewable energy. We've created an obligation. You have to use renewable energy, so you could create that in the fisheries. Okay, you need to have your fish locally and all this stuff. Then they give support on the sense of like, okay, I'll give you a minimum price, and if you don't get that minimum price, I'll cover for that difference. And that price is high enough, so it gives them money then to invest into the infrastructure. And what I've seen so far, I haven't seen that
it's true.
in the ocean, and that's what I'm looking at these experts from countries. But that's what I'd be looking for, because that's what we need to invest. But if we have that, in the end, I think it's a good calculation. Again, to use the energy, which I know better. I mean, the renewable energy analogy. I mean, 15 years ago, we were paying solar, 600 euros per megawatt hour. Today we can produce it in Greece for 25. And that's because we've been investing and getting it better and then doing it better. So all this is money that flowed through the economy. Otherwise, there was a support, but in the end, you got private investors, and the economy itself has developed. So I mean, that's what I'd do.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it is important that we also modernize the fisheries industry. It's like in agriculture. Everybody knows that we have the legacy way to cultivate things, but now with technology and the drones and so on, even farming has become much more sustainable, much more precise. So the same thing has to go down now to the fisheries industry. And of course, in many cases, it's as you say, it's family businesses, and they have their boats, and it's difficult for them, and obviously they will be looking for subsidy. But I think it's important the way to organize this, and it is also something we could also consider in our case, because with the fish works we have big communities of fishermen gathered together, and this could be a way of seeing it in a more, as you said, a business and commercial approach, which is to predict the cash flow in order to make sure that the investment that they will do will make sense for someone to support in the boats. And but as you very rightly said, even here in Portugal and anywhere in the Mediterranean, people expect to have, as tourists, to have the fish, and the fish has to be there, and it is important to be a local fish, relatively, rather than the fish that people can have in their own countries. But we have seen in some of the cases now also in Greece, where we want to develop some ports or some marinas, and there are some fishermen facilities nearby. So what we try to do all the time is to make sure that they can be relocated nearby, but in, of course, good and modern conditions. But of course, it's not something that we can just wipe out. It is. It's impossible, and also, of course, for the local community. And this attention also helps us convince the local population that it's good to have an investment in a marina or in a port, because if they see that there is a disruption of their everyday life and they're part of, and we kick out the fishermen just to bring in the big investors and they build everything, this does not make sense. So also for our criteria, in order to privatize some marinas or ports, this is also included. And the idea, of course, is to move towards what you said, to have some ports that will be digital, and they will have some competitive advantage, because the big ports, they have the volumes, they have everything, but it is important for the rest of the ports around, and in Mediterranean we have a lot of ports in all the countries, that they have some special characteristics that will also attract interest, rather than, and some specialization for each port, in order to also make it interesting for an investor to go, and also for the logistics that they have to go around and connect the ports eventually.
I like very much the direction that this discussion has taken. Thank you, Guy, for what you mentioned about the example from the energy side, because what we have seen over those, 20 years we've been looking at the development of renewable energy, is that there has been a need for policies and the right type of incentives to be put in place so that we counteract what we used to call the perverse incentives that were supporting the fossil fuels. And why did we have that? Because it took some time to realize that we, A, have the perverse incentives in place, and B, that we need to do something. My understanding is that Europe still, all of our countries actually, still need to go some way to understand the potential of the blue economy and how there need to be the proper incentives in place to counteract the perverse incentives that exist. Because take, for example, what is happening, as you mentioned, with fisheries. We still do not have the things in place that would control the illegal, unreported, unregulated fisheries that actually lower the value of the landings and of the fish, and that would be very important for your landing places and the trading, or tourism. I mean, still tourism is a disastrous activity for some of the coastlines in Europe. And this is something that you would not want to be part of the investment, but you need to turn the page to that, and you need the right types of incentives. And then there is one more dimension, which is how you can give the incentives that create values from services that we do not even know they're there. So, for example, one work that we'll be presenting tomorrow morning with Ruben, a great collaboration we did with Forum Oceano, is how we can see protected marine areas, marine protected areas, for example, as carbon sinks. Carbon sinks are things that have value in markets. We don't even take this into account now. And this is something that we need to start looking into. So all of these incentives is also a matter of policy. And I think that events like this one, not because we are co-organizers, but because these things need to be said and carried up to the government, have to be in place so that then Guy and people that do the work that Guy does can find the right places and the right incentives to start investing in all that, to mobilize the whole process.
But the thing is that I see lots of new technologies that will help fisheries, tourism, offshore wind, offshore energy. I see lots of policy papers, lots of interventions from the European Commission, from GFCM. You produce a lot of great policy work, but also a need for funds to find the perfect startups or the perfect initiatives to invest in. So what is missing? Why? Because I see a gap here. What is missing in order for policy and funds to actually work together and create synergies for the blue economy?
It's a good question.
It's the $1 million
They
question.
probably have to find each other, I guess, is the answer. It's true, you will always find VC funds, venture capital for the startups, and maybe with this drone guy who keeps on raising his hand, or the guy who does the water, whatever. The VC always, because VC just spiel money and go over and do stuff. But if you want to bring sizable capital, which you'll find with infrastructure funds, and there's literally billions of euros, out there that today are investing on land stuff, whether it's airports, airports are, we're trying to redo the stuff, but ports, ports is quite hot, autoroutes, all this stuff. I mean, you can push them to the blue economy, but you have to structure it. And that is, but it's the policymakers that have to. So it starts with the policy, and then if you want to go quickly, there's two things. If you want to go quick, you secure revenue, so you give visibility to the revenue. If you want to keep industry in-house, you provide subsidies so that the industries actually stay local. And that's the two levers. I think where we stand from a global warming standpoint, we probably have to go quick, but we also want to remain as local as possible. So need a bit of both, but that can be done.
Of course, yes, of course.
Yeah, building on that, I think, and this is related to ports, for example. In the Aspen project, one of the surprises we've got is that we have ports that are very, I would say, interested, and they are focused on becoming green ports. Green ports in a way of their infrastructure. So the quays, the breakways, for them to be designed in the way they can be catalyzers of natural capital in the ports. In fact, this is one of the innovation challenges that we have inside the Aspen project. So there are about, if I'm not mistaken, 5 to 7 ports that want to do that. And there are ports that are where the tourism activity is the way to do that. And it goes even to ports to want to have, marine forests and seagrass restoration in there. And when you see, a port that is thinking like this, you say, wow, this is kind of a big change of mindset, and how they can be also how infrastructure can be effectively a catalyzer of ocean restoration. And in there, about green infrastructure, I could say, for example, one of the main sponsors of this event, the Reef Company, is in fact a company that is focused on ocean restoration. All artificial reefs and other kind of structures, and also the digital technology that you can put in the ocean for accelerating, the ecosystem restoration, or greening the infrastructure, or augmenting the resilience of the coastline by also, catalyzing the restoring of the marine ecosystem. And this is, maritime and portuary engineering applied in another context.
I think this is very interesting. For example, the case of the port of Vigo is big in this kind of change of mentality, and I agree. It takes a long-term view, and that takes policy. It takes that there is some incentives and some regulations that at least investors see, okay, I can see some stability that at the end of the road can end up in something positive. In Vigo, they have built and they have spent money on rebuilding the ecosystem inside the port, and now they're building an aquarium inside the port itself that is going to create revenues. And this is a vision that I don't think we had like 10 years ago. Thinking of a big industrial port like Vigo with high contamination and not very clear waters, changing completely the mentality to invest in restoring the ecosystems and creating a natural ecosystem that you can go and check. And it's right now actually even exporting biomass, exporting fish to the surroundings for fishermen to use. So this is a completely change of mentality, but it takes a lot of money, a lot of, and it takes also kind of who is going to invest here if you don't have any kind of support or any kind of long-term view that at the end of the process you are going to get something out of it, because this is expensive. It's going to be expensive and it's going to take time, both things, I think.
The dimension that was put in this discussion by what Ruben said is something very interesting to me, because we usually take the services that are provided by the values of marine ecosystems and so on for a given thing. They're not. Take, for example, what is happening with tourism. As you said, in tourism you might have activities that are happening because you have the nature in place, in the ecosystem in place, both activities on site, but also activities in remote places. We have been involved in a project for marine sea turtles a long time ago, when the actual income was coming from an observatory place that was like, I don't know how many, like 25 kilometers away from the hatching area, but there were actually systems for monitoring with cameras, and people would pay a ticket somewhere very far from there without disrupting, and that was funding the thing. So these are services that can be provided for tourism, for example, and there are other things that we do not even count for. So if you take biodiversity-rich places, they're very important for doing R&D for medicinal purposes. This is not for free. This kind of R&D has to pay back the protected area. And of course, the third and most important thing is the what we call the nature-based services, the nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions are very important. I'll just give you one very small example, but just to let you think about the magnitude of things. We have a friend who has a hotel, and the coastline was suffering from some mild pollution issues because there was a stream that was bringing down the stream some refuse effluents from animal production. So he came to us and said, what can we do? We said, well, it's very simple. You just plant a reed bed inside this river, this small stream, and the water will be filtered. And because it's like a 2-3 kilometers reed bed, water comes out very clean. He solved his problem. He was a friend, so we didn't charge him. But normally, this is a service that he would pay for cleaning every year. And this needs to be given back to nature. Needs to be given back to those that will do the investment to establish a nature-based solution. And it has to be a virtuous circle that actually creates value and creates investment opportunities.
We see a lot of nature-based solutions now in the policy work that the European Commission does, and unfortunately Mrs. Strachinescu from DG Mare couldn't be here with us today, but it would be interesting to look into the EU missions that the DG Mare has recently announced, because they focus on exactly what you said, Spiros, on how you can use nature to provide solutions to the challenges that we have, especially in the blue economy front. As we're now running short of time, are there any concluding remarks that Miguel, I'll start with you. Any concluding remarks that you would like to share with us?
No, I think this has been a really interesting discussion and conversation, I would say. I think there is this need to try to continue giving the right value to nature in general and to the services that nature provides. There is a work done by organizations like FAO, which is going to continue be mainly based on donors and on work towards providing opportunities around. But clearly, I think that there are intermediate organizations, for example, Global Compact or other organizations that now are trying to bring the possibility to attract private investments and companies to the surroundings of this investment that UN agencies are doing, or this work that UN agencies are doing. And I think this is for me an interesting perspective for the future, because it's clear that alone UN agencies, we are only facilitating an advancement, but there has to be private companies that see a benefit of what we are working on. And I think we need to listen to each other more. And so I'm very happy to be here, I must say. And I think the way forward is a way in which everything it's given the right value, and therefore you create opportunities for people to invest on something that is going to create a revenue in the near future if you need some kind of immediate revenue, or in the long term if you have the vision to achieve a long-term objective related to sustainability of using natural resources in general.
Thank you, Miguel. Guy?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll repeat myself a bit, but I was surprised, well, not surprised, but impressed, more impressed by what you've built, this whole event. It's very interesting. It's great. There's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of potential. And my feeling is that we're at we're in an inflection point where basically, I listened to what you've done with your Portuguese fund, what you're trying to do in Greece, and I'd love to help bridge that gap between the donors of the past, I guess, which we still need and count on, because they're the ones that have been there. Came from the UN structuring this whole thing, but now it needs to trickle to real life. There's so many projects that and there's capital available to do it, but we need that structuring piece in order to go forward. But willing, so it's there.
Ruben?
Well, it's great to hear that, of course, and I also thank you for the compliment. We'll try to do our best. I also believe we are in an inflection point. It also depends now, to have the right innovation ecosystem and context to, make money, that money can exit its magic with in the solutions that can really, deploy, a sustainable solution. In that respect, I also go a bit, Greece, because, you have best of both worlds, and you have the money, you have the ports. So that's
true. That is true.
That's a good combination. So here also we have the Ministry of Economy and Sea. That's also a very good combination. So to say that we are now going to start in October to replicate the model of the Aspens of the Atlantic in the Mediterranean, with the Mediterranean Blue Accelerator Network, where Greece is part of. So it's a brilliant project financed by COSME that it joins Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece. And also with the strategic partnership with Tunisia. So, and here, the Mediterranean is a big potential also here, and also what you said, in specializing, specialize and to diversify in that respect. So we are also in that theater of operations.
Gregory?
Yes, great. And we want to be part of all these initiatives. They are important in order to make our economy sustainable, not just the blue economy. Even for Greece, the blue economy is very critical. It's 25% of all our economy. After all, we are a country where almost 20% of our land is islands, and this is critically important also for the tourism industry, but overall for the overall economy. And for that, also as the Public Wealth Fund of Greece, we want in our subsidiaries, both for the fisheries side and the ports that we have, to make sure that we have the most sustainable solutions. I told you we have a high percentage of CO2 emissions. It is in our goal that we will have a 15% reduction of CO2 emissions by 2024 across our subsidiaries, which is an ambitious but we believe realistic goal, and we have to push forward towards that. And yes, as you said, I think that there is a good solution that also for investors to make money, because investors want to invest in something that will be sustainable. And since we want to attract long-term investors, it's important also for them that they have long-term benefits. And in order to have long-term benefits, the only thing is if we have something sustainable, that will also mean there will be sustainable jobs for the people. And we have many cases, even for the marina of Kalamaria in Greece. There was a big debate, what are we going to build there? Everybody believes it's going to be too much concrete and not sustainable. But of course, what we want is to make something that it will be both pleasant and profitable at the same time. So must be a balance, and I think that we have many opportunities. And yeah, these events help also exchange some ideas, as you said, about technology and some other parts of how we should think about it. Because all countries, we have the same issues, more or less. So
True.
I think that's how we have to solve them.
All I want to say is I'm very happy that we organized this discussion, because I still believe we're at an early stage of understanding, as I said before, of what is needed. So the fact that we hear from all these amazing speakers about these things and share with you, and thank you for being here. We were, with all the things happening today, we're afraid that we might have like 3 people attending, but you actually counteracted that, and thank you very much. But I think it's a process that is starting now. And please stay tuned. We need to speak with investors, with the business, with regulators, to put the right stepping stones in place for this investment to happen. And with the opportunity, please try to be with us also tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, right? Here,
Exactly.
right,
At
the opposite
the
side,
ocean
where we'll be
stage.
presenting
9 o'clock.
how investing in protected areas is actually something that creates economic value. And that's very important. I think we'll be turning a page tomorrow morning with Ruben and Christina when we're presenting that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the interesting discussion. Ruben, would you like to?
No, I think it was a very lively discussion. I think we found here, some post-discussion future areas
For sure.
for synergies and cooperation. What I have to say, well, let's do it. So.
Of course. Thank you so much, dear speakers who some of you came to Lisbon just for this side event. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your patience and your being here with us. And we'll be seeing hopefully most of you tomorrow at 9 o'clock at the Ocean stage, just opposite this venue tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.